4:14 in the afternoon. A truck carrying nearly 40 tons is descending along I-70 deep inside the mountains of Colorado. The road slopes downward, mile after mile. Everything seems under control. But that's just an illusion, because deep inside the wheels, something is happening that the driver can't feel yet. The brake drums are starting to heat up. Not just a little, but to temperatures where steel begins to expand. Every time he presses the brake pedal, the heat builds even further. Invisible, silent, inevitable. This isn't a sudden failure. This is a process that started miles ago. And now, there's no way back. Within minutes, the brakes will stop responding, as if they just simply disappeared. 40 tons is slowly turning into an uncontrollable force that only keeps accelerating. And by the time the driver realizes what's happening, stopping is no longer an option. In less than 10 minutes from now, this truck will lose all braking power. To understand what's happening here, you have to understand how truck brakes actually work. Most people think that brakes stop a vehicle, but they don't. Brakes convert motion into heat. And in a fully loaded semi-truck, that means dealing with enormous amounts of energy. At highway speed, 40 tons of steel carries enough kinetic energy to heat metal components to extreme temperatures in minutes. On flat ground, that heat comes and goes. But on a long downhill grade, it never really gets a chance to escape. Instead, it builds and builds. Inside each wheel sits a brake drum. That's a thick metal cylinder, kind of bowl-shaped. When the driver presses the pedal, brake shoes press outward against that drum, creating friction. That friction is what slows the truck down. But friction also creates heat, and a lot of it. And here is where the real problem begins. As the temperature rises, the brake drum expands. It actually physically grows larger. At the same time, the brake shoes, controlled by components called slack adjusters, can only extend so far. They're designed to maintain contact, but they have limits. Eventually, the gap becomes too large. Now, the shoes can't press hard enough against the drum. Friction drops. Stopping power fades. This is called brake fade. And when that starts, it doesn't stop. It gets worse with every second. Because now the driver presses the pedal harder, which generates more heat, which expands the drum even more. It's a kind of feedback loop. It's a losing battle against physics. And on a road like I-70, that battle starts long before the driver even realizes it. This is why trucks are equipped with something else, an engine brake, often called a Jake brake. Instead of using friction, it uses the engine itself to slow the truck down. It turns the engine into a giant air compressor, absorbing energy without generating extreme heat in the wheel brakes. Used correctly, it can control speed on long descents almost entirely on its own. But it only works if you're in the right gear. And that's where things went wrong here in our scenario. At the top of the descent, the truck should have been in a lower gear, something like 6th. That would have kept the engine RPM high, allowing the engine brake to do most of the work. Instead, the truck stayed in a much higher gear. The engine wasn't holding the load back. Gravity was in control, so the driver relied on the surface brakes, again and again and again. Each press adding more heat, each mile making it worse. And by the time the first signs appeared, the outcome was already locked in. By 4:14 p.m., the descent had already begun. Inside the cab, Nothing feels unusual yet. The truck is holding speed, the engine is steady, but under the chassis, the temperature is rising fast. By 4:16 p.m., the driver taps the brakes again. Just a light correction. But this time, the heat doesn't fade away. It stacks. Inside the brake drums, temperatures are now climbing past several hundred degrees. The metal is expanding. Clearances are changing. Still invisible. By 4:18 p.m., the first warning sign appears. A faint smell. Hot metal. Burning lining. It slips into the cab just for a second, then disappears. Easy to ignore, but it shouldn't be. Because at this point, the brake system is already entering the early stages of fade. The driver presses the pedal again, slightly harder this time. The response feels different. Not gone, just weaker. And that is how it starts. By 4:19 p.m., speed begins to creep up. 60 miles an hour, then 65. The engine brake is active, but it's not enough. In this gear, the RPM is too low. The engine can't hold back 40 tons on a grade like this. Gravity is winning. So the driver goes back onto the surface brakes. Longer press, more force, more heat. Inside the wheels, the brake drums are now glowing. Not visibly yet, but very close. The friction material is breaking down, and the gap between the shoes and the drum is getting larger with every second. By 4:22, he presses the brake pedal again, and this time it sinks lower than even before, and the response is delayed. They're soft. Things are uncertain. The system still has air pressure, the brakes are still engaging, but the friction is gone. The heat has taken it away. By 4:23 p.m., he's going 75 miles an hour. The truck is no longer being controlled, it's being managed. Barely. The truck is screaming now, but it's too late for gearing changes to fix this. Dropping gears at this speed risks over-revving the engine. And even if it worked, the brakes are already past their limit. By 4:24 p.m., he's driving 80 miles an hour. Smoke is pouring from every wheel position. The brake drums are at extreme temperatures now. Hot enough to warp metal. Hot enough to destroy friction completely. Inside the cab, the air is changing. You can smell it. You can feel it. This isn't just heat anymore. This is complete failure. Then, he sees it. A sign on the side of the road. Runaway truck ramp. A last resort. A controlled crash designed to stop exactly this situation. He has seconds to decide. Stay on the highway and risk losing everything ahead, or take the ramp and let the mountain stop the truck. At over 80 miles per hour, there is no third option. At this speed, the decision isn't optional anymore, it's complete survival. The driver grips the wheel and commits. He steers right, straight toward the runaway truck ramp. This isn't a normal road. It's actually an engineered escape system. A long strip of deep, loose gravel, sometimes mixed with sand, designed for one purpose: to absorb the energy of a truck that can no longer stop itself. At the entrance, the surface looks soft. It's almost harmless. But it isn't. At 4:26 p.m., the truck hits the ramp at over 80 miles per hour. The effect is instant. For a moment, it feels like the truck might lose control completely, but the gravel keeps pulling it down. Every foot forward bleeds off speed, not through friction like brakes, but through resistance. The deeper the truck goes, the harder it becomes to move. The wheels sink in, the momentum collapses. Dust fills the air, blocking out everything behind him. Inside the cab, there's nothing but vibration and noise. No braking, no control, just the mountain doing the work. The speed drops fast. 80, 60, 40, 30. The resistance keeps increasing. The truck is being swallowed. The violent shaking begins to fade, and the forward motion slows to a crawl, and then it stops. Silence. No more acceleration, no more heat building. Just a truck buried deep in gravel, exactly where it needed to be, and a driver thanking his lucky stars. What failed here wasn't a single part, it was a chain reaction. It started at the top of the descent, with one critical decision: the wrong gear. By staying in a higher gear, the engine brake, the system designed to control speed without heat, was never given a chance to do its job. Instead, the surface brakes were forced to carry the entire load. And that's a battle that they cannot win on a long grade. Because brakes don't remove energy, they convert it into heat. And once that heat crosses a certain threshold, they stop working. Incidents like this happen more often than most drivers think, especially on long mountain descents like those found along I-70. And almost every time it comes down to the same lesson: control your speed before the descent. Select the right gear early. Let the engine brake do the work. Because once those brakes overheat, you're no longer in control, you're just along for the ride. Trucking is a profession where you never stop learning. Often, the best lessons are the ones we learn from each other's close calls. If you've ever had to use a runaway ramp, or you've been in a situation where you felt that the pedal was just getting a little bit soft, tell us your story in the comments. It might just be the warning a new driver needs to hear today. Thanks for watching Truck Culture. Stay safe, stay geared down, keep her between the ditches, and I'll catch you on the next run.